Howdy there, friends, family, and adversaries. Welcome to the show. I'm your hostess, Lord Dingleberry, and judging by this green screen, we are live from Mordor, the home of Sleepless Evil and GameStop's corporate headquarters. Today we're discussing GameStop's in-depth response to the coronavirus and why they only just recently closed their doors. It's a tale of corporate negligence that eventually ends in a moral victory. Let's go. The coronavirus has upended our lives. While the world has been hit by other pandemics and deadlier diseases such as AIDS in the past, the coronavirus, or COVID-19, poses a new type of threat in our modern world. The virus is very contagious, and to both the elderly and those with pre-existing conditions, it can be deadly. And as a result of this disease's spread and potential lethality, we've altered our lives in order to take drastic yet necessary precautions like repeatedly washing our hands and self-isolating and quarantining. Even the Trump administration said to avoid groups of more than 10. So if your band has more members than Slipknot, it should probably disband for a little bit. The coronavirus is such a severe threat that many governments are taking measures into their own hands. Earlier this week, many countries, state governors, and city mayors made the difficult decision to temporarily close down non-essential businesses. In many locations, businesses such as movie theaters, gyms, bars, and restaurants have been ordered to cease operations, though some states and cities allow restaurants where food can be delivered or picked up. Around the world, these geographic locations include European countries like France and American cities and states like Los Angeles, Illinois, Ohio, Washington State, Maryland, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Washington, D.C., and more. Make no qualms about it, this is a very serious issue. The rationale behind these closures is simple. Preventing the spread of this virus is of critical importance and is why only essential businesses like grocery stores, pharmacies, and gas stations are the only stores that should remain open. Due to the coronavirus's contagious nature, we must minimize our daily interactions to being as little as possible, which means temporarily closing fun yet non-essential businesses that don't sell the basic necessities. Limiting exposure to other humans as much as possible, we must go out only when necessary, lest we too contract and spread the virus. Just like an overused internet meme. GameStop, however, clearly didn't receive this memo. While the company eventually announced on Saturday, March 21st that it would be closing in-store browsing, conduct business via curbside pickup, and would offer financial compensation for employees and stores affected by closure, this comes after a full week of bad PR where the video game retailer refused to close due to coronavirus concerns and pay employees affected by the closures. When state and local governments began ordering non-essential businesses to close last week, GameStop stubbornly remained open despite how there's an ongoing health pandemic and how GameStop, the seller of video games and many a Funko Pop, can hardly be classified as essential. In fact, GameStop is so non-essential to daily life that if the company were ran by people with common sense and a shred of morality, GameStop would have shut its doors the moment government officials and health experts raised the alarm regarding the severity of the coronavirus threat. Instead, GameStop dug in their heels for a whole week, welcoming customers with open arms at the expense of public safety, despite how the company is, in many areas of the country, breaking the law. And I'm not talking about the cool Judas Priest kind of breaking the law, I'm talking about like the really bad one that gets people hurt. So why did GameStop remain open before eventually reversing course? Well, if GameStop is to be believed, then it's because they bafflingly view themselves as an essential business. In a tone-deaf memo reported via Kotaku, written earlier this week by what must have been the corporate equivalent of the Mouth of Sauron, GameStop advised its employees that due to the products we carry that enable and enhance our customers' experience in working from home, we believe GameStop is classified as an essential retail and therefore is able to remain open during this time. We have received reports of local authorities visiting. Oh my god, I need water. We have received reports of local authorities visiting stores in an attempt to enforce closure. Despite our classification, store managers are approved to provide the document linked below to law enforcement as needed. The document they're referring to was reportedly a way to contact GameStop's corporate headquarters, which means GameStop, of all companies, believed that they were above the law. They thought they were Judge Dredd. What timeline is this? GameStop's assertions, to put things bluntly, are ridiculous. Set aside that GameStop sells 20 different versions of Resident Evil and should therefore understand the severity of a health epidemic, GameStop doesn't sell food, medicine, or gas. They sell fucking video games, and the company endangered their employees, customers, and various local communities until a week after being the internet mob's shit stick. By remaining open, GameStop acted as a local gathering point in a time where other stores remained closed, and that increased the chances of customers and staff staff becoming infected by or spreading the coronavirus. And while GameStop eventually did the right thing by shuttering its doors, GameStop's actions are unforgivable, especially considering how many stores lacked sanitary equipment. According to a Kotaku report earlier last week, many GameStop patients aren't able to maintain cleanliness, lacking hand sanitizer and even toilet paper in some cases. Which means on top of the fact that GameStop is an inessential business, it's an unsafe environment during this health crisis and needed to close rather than stay open a whole week longer than necessary. Who knows if that wet spot on that console demo was just regular nerd sweat or the coronavirus. Some of GameStop's own employees sounded the alarm last week and believed that GameStop should close during this pandemic, which is something that GameStop should have done a week ago. A CNN article that quoted an Athens, Georgia GameStop employee, Dustin Carson, saying, "GameStop believing it's an essential business is absolutely ridiculous. If someone's trying to work from home, they don't want the $85 Razer keyboard we have or the $60 Razer mouse. Some cheap $20 Microsoft something is going to get them by just fine. They can get that at Walmart." On a side note, I'm really proud of Dustin Carson willing to go on record about GameStop's corporate shenanigans. Most workers in the game industry only talk to the press anonymously, and understandably so, just because, they're afraid of financial repercussions from their bosses. So good on you, Dustin Carson. With that said, GameStop isn't above the law. GameStop's business license in Pennsylvania was revoked, and states and cities like California and Athens, Georgia are strictly enforcing the closure of non-essential businesses. As a result, all GameStop stores in these locations will be closed until further notice. And in the case of the closure of GameStop's Athens, Georgia store, Carson stated to CNN, "Honestly, I'm relieved. No one needs to get sick or die over video games. They're not essential items." That should be totally non-controversial, but then again, what do I know? I'm only the most non-controversial video game writer of all time. The fact that GameStop waited until after a public outcry and government action to close their doors is enlightening. GameStop is likely well aware of how its company is inessential to daily life. They would have had to endure being raked by the internet for a whole week to do the right thing and close down for now. And yes, the cynical part of me understands that the company has been struggling financially for years, yet the coronavirus may have exposed GameStop's dire hand. Like many struggling companies, GameStop probably won't be able to survive a long shutdown, especially if they're closed during releases of new games like Doom Eternal and Animal Crossing New Horizons, or anticipated upcoming titles like Resident Evil 3 Remake. It might just simply be a do-or-die time for the company that needs as many sales as possible to stall its nearly inevitable blockbuster-style collapse. Of course, with that said, GameStop can cry me a bullshit river. GameStop endured a full week of backlash from press and video game fans before reversing course. Sure, they eventually did the right thing to close their doors and only do business via online or curbside pickup, but that doesn't change the fact that the company's top brass was more than willing to put their workers and customers in harm's way to sell video games during a public health crisis. And in the instances where stores were forcibly shut down by law enforcement, employees weren't originally going to be paid for their time off, forcing workers to either use personal time or apply for unemployment. It was simply despicable, and even though GameStop eventually did the right thing by closing in-store browsing and offering paid compensation to employees in stores that were shut down, I remain disgusted. While I firmly believe that physical video game retailers are important places for like-minded individuals to meet up and discuss games, GameStop clearly isn't responsible enough to remain in business. In fact, they showed their hand. They were incapable of supporting their customers and communities while open, and were unwilling to aid their employees when closed. And they only changed course after facing the wrath of the internet. For all the world to see, GameStop was willing to sink to a new low in order to stay open during a public health crisis. And no amount of backtracking will take away from the fact that GameStop was gearing up to put their employees and customers in both personal and monetary jeopardy. It was just gross. So that was today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a like and a subscribe. And for my very special patrons, Slasher Bales, Mom, and Miles Nelson, I just want to say thank you so much for supporting what I do. Thank you guys. Love y'all. Until next time, Lord Dingleberry signing off.